Okay, good morning everyone. Shall I start the class? Very few number of the students. Okay, today we will discuss about the diabetic retinopathy. It is the very big topic and I have summarized in one class. But it is nicely given in your Khurana also, and you can consult Parson and Kansky also. So with increasing diabetic trends worldwide, morbidity, mortality and associated costs due to the diabetic related complications are the global public health concern. So I think all of you know by this time what is diabetic. So it affects the different organ and ophthalmos. Eye is the second most affected part in the diabetic. So diabetic retinopathy is among the leading cause of visual loss at the global level. So it is the fifth cause of world blindness, and accurate estimates of diabetic retinopathy burden is of crucial importance for planning, implementing and evaluating diabetic retinopathy prevention and care interventions. So the latest available estimates of diabetic retinopathy prevalence among the diabetes mellitus subjects date back up to 2008, when diabetic retinopathy prevalence data were pulled from 35 studies reporting a global overall prevalence is of 34.6% of any diabetic retinopathy, and retinopathy risks increasing with diabetes duration. So people with diabetes can have any eye disease called diabetic retinopathy. So it can, it's not necessary that always it is affecting the retina and you will cause retinopathy. It can affect the anterior surface of the eye or as well as posterior surface of the eye. So any part affecting the eye, that is called diabetic retinopathy. This is when the high blood sugar level causes a damage to the blood vessels in the retina. So these blood vessels can swell and leak. So what happens? It is a microangiopathy. So the changes in the blood vessel wall, which can lead to the swelling of the blood vessels and leaking. Simply, you can understand just there is a affecting the blood vessels which leads to the swelling and leaking. So different changes are all due to this, and all they can close, stopping blood from passing through. So sometimes abnormal new vessels grow on the retina. So what happens when there is a swelling, leaking? So there can be the hypoxia, which can lead to the abnormal blood vessels or new blood vessels formation due to the ischemia. So all these changes can steal your vision. So up to 21% of the patients with type 2 diabetes have retinopathy at the time of first diagnosis of diabetes, and most develop some degree of retinopathy over the time. So pathophysiology of the diabetic retinopathy. So there can be a change in anatomical consideration. There can be anatomical changes or the biochemical changes. So today we will focus on the anatomical changes. So the principle over here among the 10 layers of the retina is the blood retinal barrier compartmentalize the neurosensory retina from the vascular component of the eye. So there is a choriocapillaries, there is a retinal pigment epithelium, and there is a rods and cone. So retinal pigment epithelium, rods and cone, and over here the choriocapillaries. So inner broad retinal barrier is formed by the tight junction between the retinal vascular endothelial cells and the glial cells, and the outer blood retinal barrier by the tight junction between the RPE and the zonula occludens. So this is the outer blood retinal barrier, and due to and this is the inner blood retinal barrier. So when this blood retinal barrier is disturbed, so you will have the different changes. So diabetic retinopathy is the microangiopathy. So this is a common talk which everyone wants to hear in an exam, affecting the retinal precapillary arterioles, capillaries and venules. So retinopathy has the features of both the microvascular leakage and the microvascular occlusion. So all the phenomenon occurs due to the leakage and the occlusion. So you have to understand the changes in the arterioles, in the capillaries and the venules. So there is a occlusion, there is a leakage. So this is a basic mechanism. So what are the changes? It occurs due to the occlusion. There is change in the basement membrane. So the basement membrane is thickened. The endothelial cells are damaged. So these cells are damaged. RBC changes occurs. The shape of the RBC is changed and the platelet stickiness or adhesions occurs, increases. So platelets increases. So these are the basic changes which occurs in this microangiopathy. So what are these? This is a change in the basement membrane that is thickening. There is this loss or damage of these endothelial cells. There is a change in the RBC and there is a platelet stickiness. So whereas over here due to the leakage, there is a loss in the pericytes. So as the barrier function is lost, there is a leakage. So leakage can leads to the exudations either or due to the hemorrhage can occur. So either occlusion can lead to ischemia following the new vessels formations or the small microaneurysms, whereas in case of the leakage, you can see the hemorrhage and exudates. So this figure is very important and this presentation is very important, and in exam time also you can be asked this, both in theory and practical. So microvascular leakage, degenerations and loss of the pericytes. So the capillary wall is weakened. So see, this is a pericytes, and the capillary wall is weakened and outputting of the capillaries at the structure which weak point, which is a microaneurysm. So microaneurysm is nothing, it is just the outputings of the capillary wall, and it when you see with the direct ophthalmoscope, what you will see is you will see just a dot like hemorrhage, and at the other side of the weakening of the capillary wall, you will see the plasma leakage, retinal edema and hard exudates, or this can be arranged in the sarcinate pattern. So this is a sarcinate pattern which is haphazardly arranged, and you can see these are the exudates and edema swelling of the retina. So what happens following the loss of the pericytes? There is a weakening of the capillary walls, which can lead to the microaneurysm formations, which is the outputting of the capillaries, and there can be the edema formation, which is the exudations and edema. So there are several ways of classifying this diabetic retinopathy, but so many, in spite of so many things, the EG classifications depends upon the early diabetic retinopathy study. So this has become very famous, and it is very easy because we don't need any tool to classify or see the disease. It is simply by seeing the pictures, we don't need extra added things, by seeing this microaneurysm, exudations, this edema and these new vessels formations. So we don't need anything. So that is why it has been classified as non-proliferative and proliferative depending upon this pictures. We don't need any other extra tool. So due to the leakage, there is a hemorrhage and exudates, and which is classified in NPDR, that is a non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy and edema. And whereas in case of the ischemia or occlusion, it can lead to hypoxia, and angiogenesis occurs, that is a new blood vessels formation, and which is classified as proliferative diabetic retinopathy. So you must not forget lifelong this scenario. So microaneurysm is the earliest and most specific sign. So this is a common MCQ questions also. What is the first presentations of the diabetic retinopathy, which is a microaneurysm? So it is 10 to 100 microns in diameter and appears as a red dot. So we will see simply like this red dot. So microaneurysm ruptures which result in the intraretinal hemorrhage, which can be the dot blot hemorrhage or which can be the flame-safe hemorrhage. So dot blot hemorrhage occurs in the outer plexiform and the inner nuclear layer, whereas the flame-safe hemorrhage occurs in the nerve fiber layer. So this is a nerve fiber layer, the hemorrhage occurs, which occurs like a flame, and over here dot hemorrhage occurs, which occurs in the outer plexiform layer. So if you remember this, it is very easy to understand. So the loss of the pericytes, the endothelial cells loss, change in the tight junction, leukocytostasis, and with aging, all these changes result in the breakdown of blood-retinal barrier. So we have two barriers, so breakdown of this barrier resulting in the inflow of the fluid, then the outflow, so which result in edema. So loss of the blood-retinal barrier which causes the edema due to the changes in the pericyte, that is the endothelium. What are the changes? There can be the pericytes loss, endothelium, so which leads to the endothelial cell changes. So edema occurs. So when the inflow of the fluid is more than the outward, development of the retinal edema requires the accumulations of the fluid, which occurs if leakage, microaneurysm, or incompetent capillaries. So the uptake from the adjacent capillaries, healthy RPE cells occurs. So if there some amount of the edema is there and some amount of the healthy RBC is there, so if the RBC, retinal pigment epithelium, has got different functions which we have discussed, and if the healthy RP cells are there, then the absorptions of the edema will occur and the edema will resolve. So microvascular occlusion. So what happens over there? The capillary basement membrane changes, endothelial cell damage and proliferation occurs, and increased plasma viscosity, deformations of the RBC, and increased platelet stickiness. So these three changes occurs in the microvessels, which leads to the occlusion, and the occlusion results in the decreased capillary blood flow and perfusion, so result in the retinal hypoxia. So which can leads to the AV shunt formation, that is the arteriovenous shunt formation, which is called the intraretinal microvascular aneurysms, and which can leads to the vascular endothelial growth factor stimulations, which causes the new vascularization and fibrovascular proliferation. So the new vessels can occur, which is characterized by the proliferative retinopathy. So new vessels you can see in the disc. This is the disc area, and you can see the elsewhere also, and even in the iris, in the anterior segment, you can see the new vessels formation. So this which we have discussed earlier, which result in the vasoformative substances due to the hypoxic retina, so result in the rubeosis iridis. So basement membrane thickening, so repeated endothelial cells death with regenerations and replacement with each new generations contributes their own basement lamella, along with entrapment of the cellular debris from the dead cells lead to the basement membrane thickening. So how the basement membrane is thickened? So the glycations of the basement membrane protein, alterations in the structural chemical composition, which leads to the increase in type 2 collagens and the lamella. So these two are the factors that result in the basement membrane thickening due to the repeated endothelial cell death with the regeneration and replacement of the new cells which results to the basement membrane thickening. Loss of the endothelial cells due to the chronic leukocyte mediated injury and capillary acellularity occurs due to the seen in advanced stages, and exact what is the exact mechanism is not known. So these are the changes which you have to learn by heart for an exam, and you can present as a pathogenesis, whether in the flow chart or by the diagram or by you can write. So the pathogenesis of diabetic retinopathy is very important. The two things you have to know in the diabetes is the retinopathy and the classification. So there are many biochemical changes. So one is the polyol pathway, where the this aldose reductase, which converts into the glucose into the sorbitol, and sorbitol dehydrogenase into the fructose. So the sorbitol, due to the damaging effect on the pericytes and the endothelial cells, which can lead to the increased concentrations, which causes the cataract formation. As the metabolism of the lens is altered due to the, there will be disturbance in the supply of the glucose, as the lens is a vascular structure which can lead to the cataract formations. So vascular endothelial growth factor is produced by the RBs, retinal pigment epithelial cells, ganglion cells, Muller cells, pericytes, endothelial cells, glial cells, and neuron. So these are the different cells which are present in the 10 layers of the retina. So it's produced the vascular endothelial growth factor. The 6 major isoforms, with the isoforms 165 being the most important. So hyperglycemia and hypoxia, this accentuate the productions of this vascular endothelial growth factor. So what does this vascular endothelial growth factor does when it's produced in more concentration? So it causes the phosphorylations of the tight junctions. So ultimately they causes a change or break in the blood retinal barrier. So which causes a fenestration in the endothelial cell membrane, as a result the breakdown of the blood retinal barrier. So other is the PFGF, angiotensin 2 or IGF. These all results in a new vessels formation, which causes a new vascularization. Other biochemical changes occurs due to the increased blood glucose is oxidative stress. So always there is a balance between these free radicals and the antioxidant. So the imbalance between the level of the free radicals and the antioxidants defense in the biological system, which causes a glycolysis and the TCA cycle. So synthesis of the ATP by the oxidative phosphorylation and productions of the free radical. So the chronic hypoglycemia, which causes the increased productions of such free radicals. As a result, this antioxidants defense is decreased and the free radicals are increased, so it results in the imbalance. So that the cycle is disturbed. So this is these are the changes which occurs in diabetic retinopathy. And about the classifications of the diabetic retinopathy, it is an attempt to simplify the classifications of diabetic retinopathy. A number of the experts made and created the International Clinical Disease Severity Scale for the diabetic retinopathy. So this disease severity scale is based on finding of the Wisconsin epidemiological studies of diabetic retinopathy and elderly treatment diabetic retinopathy study. So this new classification is simple to use, easy to remember, and based on the scientific evidence. So it's just a non-proliferative, proliferative diabetic retinopathy, diabetic maculopathy, and end-stage diabetes disease. So it is classified as non-proliferative, proliferative, and diabetic maculopathy and end-stage diabetes disease. So non-proliferative is classified as mild, moderate, severe, and very severe. So it is very easy to remember. and scientific evidence that what are the changes occurred there in the eye. So from that we can simplify which is it is proliferative or non-proliferative type. So there are 5 stages that can be recognized. The first is no apparent retinopathy. As the name implies that there is no diabetic fundus changes. So even the people have got the diabetic mellitus, but they do not have any change in the retina, so no apparent retinopathy is there. The second stage is a mild non-proliferative retinopathy. So this stage is characterized by the presence of few microaneurysms. So in case of the non-proliferative mild type also, we need not to worry. Just a few microaneurysms are there, and we ask patients simply to control the blood sugar level, and depending upon what is the distance the patient has come, either 6 monthly or annually, we ask for the regular follow-up along with the control of the blood glucose level. The third stage is the moderate non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy, which is characterized by the presence of the microaneurysm, intraretinal hemorrhage, or venous bleeding that do not reach the severe. We have a regular follow-up with the control of the blood sugar level in about 3 to 6 months, depending upon the duration. So these are the things which you see, like a microaneurysm, dot hemorrhage, and the venous bleeding. Severe non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy, the fourth stage is a clear label to identify. So data from the elderly treatment diabetic retinopathy studies has. So at PTR, then we come to the proliferative diabetic retinopathy, which can be characterized by the neovascularization of the disc, neovascularization of retina. So it can be at the disc or elsewhere in the retina, or it can be in the neovascularization of the iris. So always it is to remember that the diabetic patient, you should see the anterior segment properly, then only dilate the eye to see the retina. Otherwise, you can miss the neovascularization of the iris after you dilate the pupil. It is very important. And neovascularization of the angle. So it is in this you have to do the gonioscopy. So the gonioscopy also in the we cannot do the gonioscopy in the OPD basis for all the patient, but we have a gonio lens. So with the help of the gonio lens, it needs some time to do the gonioscopy. So you will see, you will put a gonio lens and see the angle structure. So new vessels can be seen at the angle structure in case of diabetic patient. So vitreous hemorrhage or tractional retinal detachment. So this is kept in the different heading at the end stage diabetic disease also, the vitreous hemorrhage and the tractions RD. So these are the changes. You can see the new vessels over here. So new vessels is just, you will see in the arborizing pattern, it will be just like a bunch. And this is a macular edema. So in case of the non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy, you can see the microaneurysm, you can see the hard exudate, and you can see the hemorrhages, dot hemorrhage. So in case of the proliferative diabetic retinopathy, you can see these are different frame-shaped hemorrhage. These are the cotton wool spots, and you can see the new vessels formation. And normal retina, when you see, this is the optic disc with the small cup over here, the vessels, and this is the macular area. So with regards to macular edema, it should be noted if macular edema is present or absent. So if it is present, then it is further classified as mild, moderate, or severe depending upon the distance of the exudates and thickening from the center of the fovea. So we do the OCT, optical computed tomography. So this is done to see the thickness of the retina, and otherwise we will just see that macular edema is present or not. So if the macular edema is present, it is also indications for either the intravitreal injections of Avastins, or it is intravitreal, it is important to give the steroid to subside the edema, because the major cause of loss of vision in case of the NPTR and PTR is the macular edema. So you can see over here the macular edema. So what are the symptoms of these diabetic patient? So you can have diabetic retinopathy and not know it. So the changes can be there, but the patient may not know it. This is because often has no symptoms in the early stage. As the diabetic retinopathy get worsened, you will notice the symptoms. So in the early stage, you will not see any symptoms. Seeing an increased number of the floaters. So floaters means a black shaded things which can be seen in front of your eyes, like insects or the spider webs, where you can see, and it moves with the movement of the eye. Especially in the white background, it can be seen. But floaters can be due to the other regions also, like in high myopia, or the eye with the trauma, or have gone intraocular surgery also. But you have to rule out whether it is a pathological or not. And blurring of the vision is there. So the main cause of the blurring of the vision is due to the macular edema. Having vision that change sometimes with the from blurring to clear. So it is change in the refractive index or the refractive power of the eye due to the increased level of the sugar level. Seeing black or dark area in a field of vision. So it is like kind of floaters. Having the poor night visions, and as the photoreceptors are affected, so there will be a poor night visions, and noticing color appears faded or worse. So this is also due to the disturbance or affected cones, and losing vision. So finally the loss of the vision. So how you will diagnose a case of the diabetic retinopathy? Drop. So it is very simple. Drop will be put in your eyes to dilate the pupil. So we will dilate the pupil with the tropicamide, and if patient who do not have the high blood pressure, we dilate with the tropicamide plus, which is more faster to dilate. And this allows the ophthalmologist to look through the special lens to see the inside of your eyes. So I have already discussed earlier that in the slit lamp we can see only till the anterior segment of the eye, that is till the lens. So beyond the lens we need some lens or extra lens, so to see the retina. So we use either the 90 diopter lens or the 78 diopter lens in case of the slit lamp. Or if we use the indirect ophthalmoscopy, then we use the 20 diopter lens to see the retina. So we can also see with the help of the direct ophthalmoscope. So direct ophthalmoscope, though the magnification is increased to 15 times, but the field of vision is narrow. So especially we use the indirect ophthalmoscopy to see the fundus. So what is the first way of seeing the fundus is dilating the eye with the tropicamide and evaluating the fundus. Second is the doctors do the fluorescent angiography of the retina, so which is available if it is available in your hospital. In our medical college, we do not have the fluorescent angiography facilities, but in the eye care or the eye centers or the eye hospital, we have the fluorescent angiography to see what is happening to your retina. So the yellow dye or the fluorescent is injected into the vein using your arm. The dye travels to your blood vessels, and the special camera takes the photo of the retina as the dye travels throughout its blood vessels. So this shows if any blood vessels are blocked or leaking flow. So it also shows if any abnormal blood vessels are growing or not. So it is also very important. And OCT, it is another way to look closely at the retina. The machine scans the retina and provides the detailed image of the thickness, and this helps your doctor to find the measures of swelling of your macula. So these are the three measures which we specially do in our OPD to see the retina. And what are the treatment modalities of the diabetic retinopathy? So treatment is medical control of the diabetes, which is very important. Besides that, controlling the blood sugar and blood pressures can stop the vision loss. So it is always important, not only controlling the blood sugar, it is equally important that we should control the blood pressure also for the treatment of the diabetic patient. Most of the time, the patient will have the diabetes, eventually will develop the hypertension, but sometimes they may not develop also, but it is very necessary to control both. Carefully follows the diet, your nutrition chart also recommended by the nutritionist, and take the medicines for your diabetes doctor prescribe for you. Sometimes the good sugar control can even bring some of your vision back. So if there are changes in the refractive power, or if there is changes in the like imbibrations of the lens, so control of the blood sugar can also will bring some amount of the vision back, vision back in the patient. Controlling your blood pressures keeps your eyes blood vessels healthy. So it is equally important controlling the blood sugar as well as the blood pressure. And the medicines, one type of the medication is the anti-VEGF medications, that is the Avastin, Ilian, Lucentin. So anti-VEGF, vascular endothelial growth factors, Avastin is widely used in every hospital, though we have to give the different set of injections of Avastin, but usually 3 or 4 injection is preferred, and though it is costly. Anti-VEGF medications helps to reduce the swelling of the macula, slowly vision loss, and perhaps improving the vision. And these drugs is given by the injections in the eye. So steroid medicine is another option to reduce the macular swelling. So this is also given as the injections in the eye. So your doctor will recommend how many medication injections you will need over the time. So depending upon the clinical evaluation after each injection, the retina specialist will evaluate how many injection is required. So the another medication is anti-VEGF therapy. And the laser surgery, so there are different types of the laser given, either the Bazar laser or Greek laser or the pan-retinal photocoagulations. So laser therapy might be used to help to seal off the leaking blood vessels, and this can reduce the swelling of the retina. Laser therapy can also help to shrink the blood vessels and prevent them from growing again. So sometimes more than one treatment is needed in some patients. So both the treatment like injections of the anti-VEGF along with the laser therapy can also be required for the same patient. So laser therapy is also a very recommended therapy for the diabetic retinopathy patient with the moderate to severe NPDR or with the PDR. So what we use is pan-retinal photocoagulations, that is we damage the surrounding retina with so that we make the hypoxic retina into the anoxic retina, so that the remaining part of the retina becomes healthy and there will not be new growth of the vessels. And other modalities of the treatment is the vitrectomy in case of the vitreous hemorrhage or advanced traction retinal detachment like this. So if you have the advanced PDR, your ophthalmologist may recommend the surgery called vitrectomy. So the ophthalmologist remove the vitreous gel and blood from the leaking vessels in the back of your eye. This allows the light rays to focus properly on the retina again. And the scar tissues might also be removed from the retina. So depending upon the conditions, priority and other health factor, so the priority of the treatment is chosen. So preventing the vision loss from the diabetic retinopathy, if you have a diabetes, talk with your primary eye care doctors about controlling your blood sugar. High blood sugar damages the retinal blood vessels that causes a vision loss. So do not have the high blood pressures or the kidney problem. Ask your doctors about the way to manage and treat this problem. See your ophthalmologist regularly for dilated eye examinations, and diabetic retinopathy may be found before you even notice any vision problem. So if you notice vision changes in one or both eyes, call your ophthalmologist right away and get treatment for diabetic retinopathy as soon as possible. This is the best way to prevent the vision loss. So always it is recommended that once the patient has got the diabetic, they should have the regular eye checkup every 6 months to 1 year, even if they do not have any symptoms. Do you have diabetes and need an exam for the eyeglasses? This is also another important things which you have to understand and make the people understand about the diabetes is about the glasses. So many people go to the glass shop and buy the new glass thinking that they have checked up their eyes. So that is not the complete eye examination. So changes in the blood sugar level can affect your vision. So make sure your blood sugar is under control for at least 1 week before the eye examination, because eye glasses prescribed when a blood sugar level are stable works best. So if the blood sugar level is high, then the glasses power may not be correct. So always it is recommend to change in the glass, or that the appropriate power of the glass when at least 1 week of the blood sugar is controlled. So this is also very important, because there in the shop you can have a change in the glass and have an eye checkup like this. So that is not the recommended way of doing the eye checkup. Okay, so this is about the diabetic retinopathy, which I have discussed about the pathophysiology, symptoms of the disease, and sign. The sign is discussed in the classifications and different investigations, and how you will treat the diabetic retinopathy and what is the advice you give to the diabetic patient. So if you have any question, please put. And in the next class, I will discuss about the age-related macular degeneration, which is also very important, and it is also one of the cause of the vision loss, central vision loss, and in the old age. And if possible, I will discuss a hypertensive retinopathy also if I will get time. So thank you for the today's class, and please go back and study and make your own notes so that it will be useful for your exam along with the figure.